briefing that is underway. Let's also now dip in and listen into what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said a little while back when he raised the issue of terrorism at the SCO.
और terrorism suicide पिछले रविवार श्रीलंका की अपनी यात्रा के दौरान मैं सेंट एंटनी में एक चर्च गया था। वहां मुझे आतंकवाद के उस घिनौने चेहरे का स्मरण हुआ जो हर कहीं कभी भी प्रकट होकर रोज मासूमों की जान लेता है। इस खतरे से निपटने के लिए सभी मानवतावादी ताकतों को अपने अपने संकीर्ण दायरे से निकलकर एकजुट हो जाना चाहिए। आतंकवाद को प्रोत्साहन, समर्थन और वित्त प्रदान करने वाले राष्ट्रों को जिम्मेदार ठहराना जरूरी है। एससीओ सदस्यों को आतंकवाद का सफाया करने के लिए एससीओ रेड्स के तहत सहयोग की पूरी क्षमता का इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए। भारत आतंकवाद से निपटने के लिए एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर के सम्मेलन का आह्वान करता है।
All right, so that is, of course, the big soundbite given by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where he said that those nations that back terror must be isolated and also those nations that foment terror must be held to account. And this was the issue that Prime Minister Narendra Modi raised in the forum of SCO. And if I can bring my colleague Siddhant Sibal, who is presently in Bishkek, where the SCO is underway. Siddhant, this is a very significant issue that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has raised. Now, it is the consistent policy of India that Pakistan, which has been fomenting terror, which has been, of course, the root cause of terror, not just within the Indian subcontinent, but in fact in the greater region at large, needs to be, in fact, brought to account. Now, how is this going to resonate within Pakistan? Because the Pakistani Prime Minister was, of course, sitting there on the same forum.
The visuals were also showing the Pakistani Prime Minister when the Indian Prime Minister was speaking, and he of course looked very not comfortable, but clearly we know that Pakistan is not comfortable with the idea of world saying that the terrorism emanates from Pakistan, despite the evidences being provided by not only New Delhi but by Kabul. Next week the FATF's meeting takes place, and there of course the evidence will be provided by the world community, and if it seems that Pakistan hasn't taken a strong action on the terror groups on its territory, Pakistan might be blacklisted, but we have to wait for next week for that. But talking about what is the agenda of the Indian Prime Minister, we know ever since he has taken charge, his first visit was to Maldives and Sri Lanka. In both his visit, whether when he spoke at the Maldivian Parliament, inside the Maldivian Parliament, or when he visited St. Anthony's Church, his focus was clear. Terror is an issue, and this is a major issue. The world community should come together. He even suggested a conference, a global conference on this issue. India for a long time has been calling for a common definition on the issue of terrorism. India proposed CCIT, which is a convention on international terrorism way back in 1996 that calls for a common definition of terrorism. But the United Nations, all the countries could not actually come to a consensus that what is terrorism, and the world still doesn't have a common definition when it comes to the issue of terrorism. So by and large, that is something that the Indian Prime Minister has been focusing on, forming a global coalition when it comes to the issue of terrorism. And we know the entire region is suffering from one country, and that country is Pakistan. That has been the focus of the Indian Prime Minister during his multilateral and bilateral visits. This is his first multilateral visit in second term, and of course, as expected, he used this forum to tell the world about the issue of terrorism emanating from Pakistan, for which Pakistan hasn't really done strong action. Well, the Pakistanis have been claiming that they have taken strong action against terror networks, whether it's Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba, but New Delhi clearly doesn't believe what Pakistani say, because they have been doing this for last 20 years, whether it's after the Mumbai terror attack or whether it's after Pathankot terror attack or Uri terror attack.
Absolutely, indeed. That is in fact a problem with Pakistan, where they've been using terror as a matter of their state policy. And also considering, Siddhant, this is such an important forum at which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has in fact brought up the issue of terror. Now, over the last few days, we've been seeing Pakistan trying to make overtures of peace. They want to reinitiate the process of talks. But India has been pretty consistent in what it has said. It has said first there needs to be action, credible action, concrete action that is tangible on terror. Only then can the process of talks in fact begin. Now, post-Pulwama, this is in fact the first time that the leaders, Prime Minister Modi and Imran Khan, are virtually face-to-face. We know for a fact that there are no kind of a structured or a formal interaction between the two. There could be some kind of an informal interaction, but that has not taken place so far. There's also not been any pull-aside. Now, Prime Minister Modi will be there till later on this evening. Is there any indication at all that an informal kind of an interaction could take place between the two heads of governments today?
Well, Mohammed, behind me is the conference hall which is being telecasted on the television, where all the leaders are present, and this is the only chance if there is a pull-aside or if they manage to have some pleasantries. Since yesterday, there have been 3 chances, starting with the dinner, with the concert, and of course the morning photo op, the family photo op. But in all these 3 places, we saw the body language of both the leaders, and of course the Indian Prime Minister clearly sent out a message before coming to Kyrgyzstan that he won't be using the Pakistani airspace. The body language, of course, tells that there are, of course, differences, and it's now being confirmed by both the sides, by New Delhi and by Islamabad, that there weren't any pleasantries exchanged, no interaction took place between both the leaders, whether it's the dinner, whether it's the concert, or whether today morning at the family photo. So that clears the air that there will not be any kind of conversation. Formal conversation was ruled out by the Ministry of External Affairs a few weeks ago. In fact, WION was the first channel to break this story that there will be no formal interaction. But we also knew for a pretty long time that given what Pakistan had indulged in, killing more than 40 of our soldiers in Pulwama, India is not going to forget that and is going to take a strong action. Of course, Balakot was a strong action and a strong message to Pakistan. But since then, India is committed to continue with a policy of talks, and terror can't go together. In fact, the Indians have already told this to the Chinese. Yesterday, when the bilateral happened, the Indian Prime Minister clearly told the Chinese, yes, there are disputes between India and Pakistan. This is a bilateral dispute, but we will solve these disputes on our own terms. We did try to come out with a peace process. We did try to talk to Islamabad, but Pakistan has been derailing India's attempts for forging a peaceful South Asia. We know that the Indian Prime Minister in his first term landed in Lahore. He met the then Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, but there is a dichotomy in the Pakistani establishment itself. So that is something that has been playing a role of obstructionism. Of course, Pakistan, since the Balakot and of course its own misadventure on 27th of February, has closed its airspace, but that's causing problems for so many people, whether it's Indians, Afghans, or so many people who would like to travel from Europe to Southeast Asia or way back. So clearly, Pakistan, it seems, is not only isolated but acting really against the global norms.
Absolutely, indeed. And also we can see that Imran Khan is presently addressing the SCO summit. But the issue, of course, Siddhant, is does Imran Khan in fact even have the leeway to try and make any kind of a decisive change in the policy of Pakistan in using terror as a matter of state policy? Because it's fairly well known that he had the backing of the army at the time that he got elected. And for all we know, it could be the army that is still calling the shots. And despite the fact that Imran Khan could be making the right noises, he may not be able or given the leeway to take the right decisions and to take action against these terrorists.
Well, the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, we know, came in what circumstances as the Prime Minister. The elections, we know what happened during the elections. The media was clamped down. There was, of course, heavy restrictions on many things. But by and large, that's a story for another day. Talking about what Pakistan is right now going through is a big economic crisis. We know Pakistani Prime Minister has been going around the world, whether it's UAE, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's the IMF, and they have been asking for some kind of aid aid, and this in the backdrop of losing almost $10 billion because of being grey-listed at the FATF. In the backdrop of this, Pakistan is facing the squeeze of its policies, which is primarily supporting, aiding, abetting terrorism, and that is why today it's facing isolation. And this isolation did not start just overnight. It was way back in 2016 when the attack took place, the Uri attack took place, and then of course the South Asian countries boycotted the SAARC summit, and since then it seems that SAARC is dead and gone, and now New Delhi is focusing on BIMSTEC. We know that the Indian Prime Minister's oath-taking ceremony saw all the BIMSTEC leaders participating in that oath-taking ceremony, and New Delhi is not keen to engage when it comes to SAARC because of the obstructionist policies used by Islamabad, and clearly it became India versus Pakistan in that group, and now New Delhi is focusing towards its eastern neighbors, and through various connectivity projects such as Shahbar and the North-South Transport Corridor, planning to connect its western neighbors, barring of course Pakistan, which it knows is a permanent headache for it.
Absolutely indeed, Siddhant. Do continue to stay on with us. So Imran Khan, the Pakistani Prime Minister, is still addressing the summit at the SCO. And what is also interesting is what will Pakistan, of course, have to say in terms of its inaction in cracking down on terror. Let's again dip in and listen in to what the Indian Prime Minister had to say at the SCO just a little while back.
P for terrorism free society. पिछले रविवार श्रीलंका की अपनी यात्रा के दौरान मैं सेंट एंटनी में एक चर्च गया था। वहां मुझे आतंकवाद को उस घिनौने चेहरे का स्मरण हुआ जो हर कहीं कभी भी प्रकट होकर रोज मासूमों की जान लेता है। इस खतरे से निपटने के लिए सभी मानवतावादी ताकतों को अपने अपने संकीर्ण दायरे से निकलकर एकजुट हो जाना चाहिए। आतंकवाद को प्रोत्साहन, समर्थन और वित्त प्रदान करने वाले राष्ट्रों को जिम्मेदार ठहराना जरूरी है। एससीओ सदस्यों को आतंकवाद से सफाया करने के लिए एससीओ रेड्स के तहत सहयोग की पूरी क्षमता का इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए। भारत आतंकवाद से निपटने के लिए एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर के सम्मेलन का आह्वान करता है।
All right, so that is what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to say in terms of ensuring that terror is given and dealt with all the seriousness that it deserves. And right now we still see Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan with Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the Pakistani Foreign Minister, sitting in the background, can be seen there. And this of course, is, remember, the first multilateral fora that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has attended after having been re-elected as the Prime Minister of India for a second successive term. And Siddhant, if I can bring you in on this. Now, the SCO is a much bigger forum in terms of the population that it represents. It represents 40% of all humanity, and if Pakistan begins to get isolated, even within the SCO, that would be a huge blow for Pakistan.
Well, Pakistan is facing isolation at various groups, whether it's SAARC, whether it's FATF, but this is SCO. It has some allies. It has China backing it, and primarily this is a China-led group. But remember, India is also present, and India has been putting its points very vocally at various international forums. And today, just a short while ago, 30 minutes ago, the Indian Prime Minister kept the issue of terrorism very well, in a sense, talked about how countries who are supporting terrorism, aiding, abetting terrorism should be, in a sense, isolated. He intended to mean that, and we have seen growing isolation of Pakistan. In fact, I can give you an example that after the Pulwama terror attack, we saw how Iran, Afghanistan and India, in a sense, boycotted Pakistan. Their envoys were summoned in all these three countries, but for different reasons. But it shows that somewhere Pakistan is facing a major issue when it comes to its own domestic policies which are destabilizing the entire region, policies which do not serve the neighborhood, do not serve the the countries such as India, Afghanistan or Iran. If you look at Indian policies, the neighborhood first policy is a policy that has been lauded by many countries. In fact, when the Indian Prime Minister met the Afghan President yesterday, he talked about how good neighborliness can help grow the region. He gave an example of relationship of New Delhi with Dhaka. We have seen this has been a turnaround in relationship between India and Bangladesh, how connectivity has been one of the mainstays of this relationship, and that has been with other countries as well. We have seen how relationship has completely turned around with Maldives. But if you look at Pakistan, all of its three neighbors are having problems and have been very vocal about how Pakistan has been supporting terrorism, and that has been causing a lot of problems. Whether it's Iran, the attack in Iran which took place in February, the Iranians said that people who were responsible for terror attacks were based in Pakistan. Afghanistan has been saying for a pretty long time. We are just waiting for the Afghan president to speak.
Right.
We do expect the Afghan president to highlight this point of terrorism emanating from that country. And we know India's stand. India has already stated its stand, and we saw how Prime Minister said that these countries should be, in a sense, isolated globally.
Absolutely, indeed, Siddhant. So this, of course, is what is happening at the SCO even as we speak. We just saw the Indian Prime Minister, in fact, raise the issue of terrorism at the SCO forum. We also then heard Imran Khan also speak there, where he's, of course, tried to glaze over the issue of terrorism, stating that terrorism is, in fact, a threat to humanity, but not addressing the key concerns that have been raised by India. So this is, of course, the big story that we are tracking at this hour. We'll slip into a short break, but on the other side, we'll continue tracking what is, in fact, playing out in Bishkek as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his very first multilateral engagement with the countries of the SCO, raised the issue of terrorism. Stay tuned.